Hey guys, welcome back to the Anime Collector. Today, as you can see, I don't have any DVDs in my bookcases, and that is of course because I moved pretty recently and they're still packed up in the next room, but I thought that I might take this somewhat rare opportunity where I don't have a ton of DVDs weighing down my bookcases and they are therefore significantly lighter and easier for me to maneuver on camera, that I could take this time to share some tips with you guys that I might otherwise not be able to share with you. So the first tip I want to give you guys is something that I go out of my way to do every time that I move. So imagine that you just pulled out all the DVDs from your bookcases, and the next step in your process is to remove the adjustable shelves. As you remove each shelf, it's a really good idea to take a damp rag and wipe off all the dust. Dust has a sandpaper-like abrasive quality to it, and it's one of the contributing factors to shelf wear. Try to imagine that as you're sliding your DVDs in and out of the bookcase, or let's say that you add something new to your collection and everything else has to shift down the line, the friction of those dust particles against the bottom of your DVDs is slowly grinding away at them. And you might have noticed over time that some of your art boxes have accumulated some scuff marks on the bottom. Now, dust isn't the only contributing factor to shelf wear, but it is one of the contributing factors that we can actually fight back against. You know, it's a very minimal effort to just go ahead and try to wipe down things every once in a while, you know? Now, as I said before, I really only ever do this when I'm in the process of moving. But that's only because my collection is so large that I really cannot schedule time to go out of my way to do this. But if your collection is still relatively small, or it's a size that you feel is pretty manageable, I would recommend that you try to get in the habit of maybe once a month going out of your way to wipe the dust off of your shelves. Alright? Now, the next tip that I want to give you guys has to do with the backing on a bookcase. Now, this might not apply to all bookcases, but it should apply to the majority of them, okay? So, try to imagine, as you're constantly sliding DVDs in and out of the bookcases, that over time, the pressure of those DVDs is pushing the backing away from the anchor points that you've nailed it to, okay? So, if we look at the back here, you can clearly see how far they're sticking out. Now, I did have to apply a little bit of pressure in order to simulate this scenario, but in a real life scenario where this is happening over the course of a couple of years, this is very indicative of how far they might actually stick out, alright? Now, because this is just IKEA and it's just cheap particle board, I can easily just push these in with my thumb. I don't actually need a hammer or anything. But this is something that I try to go out of my way to do, both before I load them onto whatever mode of transportation I'm using, be it a moving van or the back of somebody's truck or something like that. And I also do it when I get to my new location before I line them up against the wall so that I can start putting the shelves in followed by the DVDs, right? And the reason I sort of do it that way is because I feel like when you move someplace, you're probably going to be living there for more than a year, or at least a year, let's say. And if you're going to be moving there and only living there for like a couple months, you're probably not even going to go out of the trouble to set up your collection and then pack it up again, you know what I mean? So if you're going to be living there for at least a year, think of that as at least a year where you're not going to be able to get behind the bookcase and fix the backing, you know? So it's just a really good idea to remember to do it every time that you move, or really every time that that opportunity arises, you know what I mean? So the next thing I want to draw your attention to is this line here. Obviously this is indicating where the middle shelf, which is a non-adjustable shelf, it's part of the structural integrity of the bookcase, showing you where that's located on the other side. Now, in the assembly instructions from IKEA, they tell you before you put the backing on to make a little notch here and over here with a pencil, and then once the backing goes on, utilize a ruler to connect the dots, pretty much. So that is supposed to show you where to put the nails, but I actually don't think that that's the most efficient way to do this. In fact, this here is the second bookcase that I built. This one over here is the first one I built more than 10 years ago, and I actually, I guess I'm just not very good at building bookcases, or at least I wasn't back then, because when I was putting the nails through here, I actually separated part of the middle shelf here, you know, like the wood actually separated and came up, so I just took a piece of clear tape and stuck it over the parts of the wood that were sticking up so that it wouldn't damage any of the DVDs that I was planning on putting on that shelf. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this bookcase in a moment, but first I want to teach you guys a little trick about this line here, or rather the step that this comes into play within the assembly instructions. So I've actually got another bookcase here that I bought once I moved in. This one actually, just for a little extra added knowledge, I don't actually have a vehicle that can hold one of these. I can't transport them. I've always borrowed somebody else's vehicle in the past when I got one. So in order to get this one, I had to order it online and have it delivered. And I just want to let you know that depending on how far away the IKEA is from your location, which the one that's nearest where I live now is actually not that far, but the shipping on my purchase cost like 40 bucks more than the bookcase and the 2 extra shelves that I bought combined. So it was like $167 for shipping. I just want to let you know that. Now I'm going to go ahead and get to the step where we would basically do this part and show you a better technique that I've used that has served me really well through bookcases 3 through 6, this one being bookcase 7. Alright? So we're at the stage now where the next step in the process is to add the notch here and here so that we will know where the actual center anchor points are once we add the backing on. Now IKEA suggests that you add that line in the middle so that you know where the middle of the shelf is, and you basically just put the nails onto that middle line. Well, I'm going to suggest that instead of using the middle, we're actually going to use 2 lines in order to mark out where the bottom and the top of the actual shelf is going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and take a Sharpie, and I'm just going to go ahead and mark here and here so that we know where that is once we put the backing on. And I'm also going to recommend that you go ahead and do this for both the bottom and the top of the bookcase, because that's going to really help you when the time comes, so that you can make sure that those nails don't accidentally hit a part of the wood that's going to cause it to separate, as it did with my first bookcase. Alright, so let's go ahead and put the backing on. Alright, so I've slid the backing in, but I want to give you guys a quick heads up that it's a really good idea to build this bookcase in whatever room in your house has the most floor space, especially if you're building it by yourself, because once you get to the stage where you put the backing in, you're going to have the bookcase laying on its front face like this. Now this is a 79.5-inch tall bookcase, which is 6 foot 7.5 inches, okay? So imagine if you're putting this in by yourself, you're going to have the backing laying flat on the ground at the foot of the bookcase, and then you're going to lift up the one end and guide it into the grooves on both sides, okay? Now that means you're basically going to need 12 feet or more of floor space to work in whatever room you're building it in, if you're doing it by yourself. Now, if you have somebody helping you, one of you can guide the front end into the slats, or the grooves, while the other person is holding the backing, which will allow it to sort of arc its way in, which won't harm it too bad. You know, you probably get away with that. But if you try to do that by yourself, you're more likely going to damage it. Okay, so it's a really good idea to just work where you've got the ample amount of floor space, and then once you're done building the bookcase, move it into whatever room you want to keep it in. Okay, they're not that heavy, and if you have them sitting upright like they're supposed to be, like the rest of the bookcases in here are, they're actually just shy of most door frames, so you probably could just, you know, if you're on a carpet or something, you could probably just slide it, just inch it in, and it'll slide right underneath the doorway, and you can just maneuver it wherever it needs to be, and it's very easy, okay? So that's a much better option than struggling with the backing and trying to get it into the bookcase while you're in a very cramped space, all right? Now, the next step in the process, according to IKEA, would be to draw the lines between here, okay? Now, IKEA, in the assembly instructions, they suggest that you utilize a ruler, but you actually don't need one. All the adjustable shelves are designed to fit between this space, so you could literally just fit the adjustable shelf in here and take your Sharpie and draw it across, right? Now, I'm going to suggest that you find out which side is the bottom, which is easy because it's got the notches where the little pegs are going to hold it up once it goes into the holes for the adjustable part of the bookcase. So you're going to find the bottom, and then you're going to go to the back where it has the particle board, okay? Because you're going to probably, if you're using a Sharpie, I mean, you could use a pencil, but if you're going to use a Sharpie, you're going to put a little bit of a black line here. So just find the groove and the particle board, and then lay it flat like that, so that again, the groove is here, the particle board's here, and you're going to lay it that way, so that as you draw the line, you don't put a black streak on the front where there's actually some paneling, okay? Now, I'm going to recommend, this is actually the first time I'm doing this. I think this is a really good idea though, but rather than drawing all the lines in and then hammering it down, I'm going to suggest that we actually just slide this down to the top first. Now the reason that we're going to start at the top is because we want to make sure that we don't have any extra lip hanging out the top of the bookcase here. If you ever wanted to secure it to the wall, that lip would be a huge pain in the butt. So we're just going to go ahead and slide it down so that there isn't any more lip, so that if we wanted to secure it for, let's say, earthquakes or something, we wouldn't have any problems, all right? Now, we're going to go ahead and line this up with our lines. And it might not look like they're actually lined up, but that's only because of this lip here. So you're going to go ahead and take your Sharpie, and we're just going to go ahead and draw that line. All right? Now, next I'm going to recommend that we go ahead and nail this down before we move on to drawing the next couple lines. Because sometimes when you nail it down, the backing is actually going to shift. And I think that's actually what happened with my first bookcase. Because the top area actually had a lot of the particle board exposed for the top part of the shelf, and the bottom had quite a bit of a lip there. So I think I probably started at the bottom, which threw my center line off. And I think I knew that when I did it, which is why I overcompensated by going too high, which caused the damage to the middle shelf. Okay? Now, because the paneling is separated into thirds so that it can fold up to fit in the box, you're going to have a seam underneath the tape here. Now, that's obviously going to be the weakest part of the structure. So rather than worrying about trying to get the nails equidistant from each other across the back, I'm going to recommend that you focus on the seam and just simply go 1.5 to 2 inches on both sides and put your nails there. Then you're going to go to the end and put it here at about 1.5 to 2 inches as well. So let's remove this board and go ahead and hammer those nails in. So just to alleviate some potential concerns that you might have, I wanted to let you know that it's actually pretty normal for the backing to be cut crooked at the top and the bottom. It's happened so consistently over the course of all the bookcases that I put together that I think they probably actually do it on purpose, perhaps to make it easier for you to unfold the backing from the ends as opposed to the middle. And if you find that while you're pushing the lip down at the top of the bookcase that you're completely flush on one end, but you've got a bit of particle board showing on the other end, just know that that's normal. I wouldn't worry about it. But if you do feel like the backing has slipped a little bit as you put in those nails, maybe as you put your hand down to guide the nail in, it just moved a little bit and you're a little bit concerned, I wouldn't worry about that. But just to give you a little idea of something you can do to sort of alleviate those worries, the nails that they give you are actually the same size as the shelves. So if you look at it here, you can literally just go ahead and stick it down like that, and that'll show you that my line definitely deviated. And in fact, you can see here that there's a little black dot on the paneling on the side of the bookcase here, and the line no longer lines up with that black dot. So it definitely shifted a little bit, which is why this time around I'm trying something new where I draw the line, hammer in the top, and then move down to the rest of it, right? So in this situation, all you have to do is look at the nail and then just take a marker or a pencil and just put a little dot at the center of where that nail is, and then use the dot so that you know where to put the nail as you start to hammer it down. And you can use that to guide you on the end pieces. Now, once you get to the bottom, because we made sure to go flush with the top here, the bottom is going to have a little bit of a lip that is going to get longer, because obviously the way it's cut, you've got one end at the top here that's flush, whereas the other end shows some particle board. On the bottom, you're going to have a lip and then a bigger lip at the part where you would have particle board on this side, okay? So this is something you can use to make that a little bit easier on yourself. you sort of alleviate that concern. Because I know, especially for me, after I put together the first bookcase and totally botched the middle shelf, I was actually pretty concerned with every other bookcase I was putting together until I came up with the system of drawing the line to show the outline of the shelf as opposed to trying to put that line in the middle of the shelf and hit it perfect, you know what I mean? So anyway, we're going to go ahead now and move down to the middle and draw those lines. So just to clarify, the reason that we're waiting to draw these lines in until after we've anchored the nails into the top is because, as we saw, there is that potential for the backing to slide a little bit when you're putting in those first few nails. And if it's going to slide in the top, obviously it's going to slide all the way to the bottom. So if we had already drawn those lines at the middle and the bottom, those lines would no longer be as accurate as they could be. So by anchoring the top first, before we draw the middle lines, we now have much more accurate lines to work with. Now, something I should have mentioned a little bit more clearly earlier is that when you're drawing these guidelines on the ends here, it's a really good idea to have an up-high vantage point, okay? If you're looking at it back here, you might think that you're putting down an accurate line, but because of this lip here, you have the potential to actually be pretty far off. So it's a really good idea to get right up on top of it so you're looking straight down at that middle shelf as you draw those lines in. Now, regardless of how straight your lines are on the guides, once you put down your shelf in order to connect the dots, you're going to find that they don't necessarily line up on this side and that side, okay? That's completely normal, okay? All you have to do is go to the inside of where that middle shelf is. So when you're drawing the line that's on this side, you're going to go this way. You're going to line it up with the one that's furthest this way, basically. And when you're doing the line that's on this side, you're just going to line it up with the one that's furthest that way. So that rather than having guidelines that are too large, you're going to have guidelines that are too small. And just going in the middle of that, you're going to know that you're okay. All right? So we're going to go ahead and hammer in these nails, and then we're going to go ahead and do the same for the bottom. So now that we're ready to draw the line at the bottom, I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you guys that although it lines up pretty well on this side, as you can see, it's just a little bit off over here on this side. Now, because this is the side that's closer to the bottom and this is the bottom shelf, we're going to go ahead and adjust our little ruler shelf here and make sure that it matches that shelf, and we're not really going to worry about whether or not it's off on this shelf, okay? So let's go ahead and draw that line. And in this situation, because we started at the top in order to make sure that we wouldn't have any problems if we had to secure it to a wall with the earthquake fastener, we've got a bit of a lip that we have to deal with here. So that means that if you wanted to utilize the nail trick that I showed you earlier, you can't line it up down here because now you're lined up on the lip as opposed to the actual bottom of the shelf, right? But you could, just to give you a reference point of where the center is, so you make sure that you put your dots down to make sure your nail's going into the center of the shelf, you could line it up here with the black of the line we just drew, and that should help you. Now we're going to go ahead and hammer these nails in and get the bookcase sitting upright so we can talk about the adjustable shelves. Alright, so the next thing that I was planning on sharing with you guys was the layout that I like to utilize with my bookshelves so that I can have the maximum number of spaces capable of holding a standard size DVD. But once I got the bookcase we just built back up on its feet again, and I had a chance to see it from this angle, I realized that there's actually been a pretty significant design change that I feel like I should address first. So it's actually not uncommon for IKEA to make little changes in their designs over the years. For instance, one of the tools that we utilized to build this bookcase used to be made out of metal, now it's made out of plastic. It's just something that's a little bit more cost efficient for them. But something that has been more noticeable over the years has been the shelving system, okay? So since I've had so many bookcases over the years, I've sort of gone through their evolutionary cycle, if you will. And when they started, they were utilizing a peg that was shaped like this. And this peg definitely got the job done. The only real issue with it is that because of its shape, there's not really anything for you to grab onto. So it was a little bit difficult at times to pull them out of the holes because sometimes they just get too snug in there. And for me, I would just go into the garage and grab some pliers and yank them out. But I can understand that these bookcases probably get a lot of use at dorm rooms where people might not have pliers on hand. So people probably complained, which caused them to switch to this design, which as you can see has an extra little cap at the top. Now because of that extra cap, it's a lot easier to pull these out of the bookcase when they're stuck in the holes. But it caused them to also have to change the shape of the notch on the bottom of the adjustable shelf. So here you can see this one would be the original peg design because it's a little bit straighter, you know, and this one over here obviously is the one that is the rounded cap, alright? So when you're putting these together, really all you have to do is look at the shelf before you pull out the pegs to put into the holes, and you'd know, okay, if I got this one, I'm going to utilize the first peg, and this one's going to be the rounded cap, right? Not a big deal. But after they had this design for a while, they switched to this design. And this one is very different. In fact, the biggest difference here that concerns us is that the part that actually goes into the holes, the circumference of that peg is like half the circumference of the rest of the pegs we've been using so far. So this bookcase here that's already been set up with some shelves, this is actually utilizing both styles of pegs. These are the original pegs and these are the rounded caps. They're being used in the same bookcase. But the new bookcase has much smaller holes. So the old pegs will not work in this bookcase, alright? Now if you haven't ever bought a Billy bookcase before, everything that you buy from here on, if you're going to get one, is probably going to utilize this design. So I wouldn't worry about it too much unless you've already got one of the older designs, in which case it might be pretty difficult for you to get some extra shelves to utilize the layout I'm about to show you, because they're probably only going to have the newer design available. But if you were able to get some of the older rounded caps, perhaps if you went to IKEA and asked them, you know, showed them your problem and said, hey, do you have any extras of these lying around in the back? If you could get some extras of these, the new shelf design uses such a similar design to the old rounded cap design that you can actually take the new shelves and you can put it on the old rounded caps and it'll work pretty good. So that is something that you could do, and if worse comes to worse, you could probably take some epoxy and stick it in the holes so that the new cap design will fit in there. That's something else you could do. The only thing that's kind of unfortunate about this whole scenario, even if you were able to get them to work, is that something else that they changed with the old designs to the new designs is that all the old bookcases have a very smooth finish on the paneling, whereas the new bookcases have a wood texture on the paneling. So if you don't like having them mismatched, then your only real option at that point is to try to sell your old one on Craigslist in order to replace it with another one of the new design. But let's move on now and talk about how to utilize this layout that gives you 8 different shelves capable of holding a standard size DVD. Alright? So in order to utilize this layout, you're going to need to buy 2 extra shelves. Because when they come standard, they come with 4 adjustable shelves. So you need to buy 2 more for a total of 6. And then the middle shelf and the bottom added together is a total of 8 shelves, right? So if we look over here at the old style design, the way the pegs were set up, as you can see, is they would have 8 holes here, followed by a little gap, and 8 more holes, okay? So the layout that I utilize puts a peg at the number 2 hole, the number 9 hole, and the number 16 hole, okay? Now, the bottom of the bookcase, underneath the middle shelf, has exactly the same layout. So you just mimic it exactly as we did here, down at the bottom. And that's going to give you this sort of layout here, okay? So this is using the same system. It's got 1 in hole number 2, 1 in hole number 9, and 1 at hole number 16, alright? And then down underneath, it's also 2, 9, and 16, okay? Now, as far as the new setup, we've actually got 26 holes in the front here, and only 22 holes in the back. Now, I'm not sure what these additional 2 holes at the top and bottom are for. I'm going to assume that maybe they're to attach like some doors or something. I know that as an accessory, they have wood doors and glass doors and stuff. So possibly that's what that's there for, because I can't imagine any other use for it. But if we're going to utilize the front row of the 26 holes, and we're going to use 26 as our number, we're going to go ahead and put a peg at hole number 6, hole number 14, and hole number 21. And then of course for the back, you're just going to add 2, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then just continue counting down to 14 and 21. Okay? Now, I know a lot of you guys collect those NIS America premium sets, and they're a little bit oversized, so you're probably wondering if they're actually going to fit in this sort of system here. Well, I personally don't collect the premium sets. I prefer the standard sets, which will definitely fit in here. But I do have a box that is approximately the same size as one of those sets. So it's actually the same width here, but it's about an inch shorter than those sets actually are. So the sets are going to be even bigger than this on this direction, just 1 extra inch, all right? Now, the way that I see nearly everybody I've ever seen store those sets is that they turn them this way and utilize this as the main label. Now, obviously, this is definitely not going to fit in this setup, all right? But if you were willing to turn it sideways and utilize this as the end label, that would fit in every single one of these shelves, okay? And personally, if I did have them, this is definitely how I would use it. And they would actually stick out about an inch when they're being put in here, which personally I actually like, because that allows you to get your finger underneath it and sort of pick it up here so you can grab it without damaging whatever one might be next to it with your fingernail. But if you were really adamant about wanting to store them this way, they actually do make an extension for the top of the bookcase that's sort of like adding a non-adjustable extra shelf. And that extra shelf that basically turns the top of the bookcase into the top shelf, that is large enough that if you wanted to, you could store all of your NIS America premium sets like this on top of your bookcase. Okay? Now, personally, as I said, I don't collect the premium sets, so it's not really an issue for me, but I know that that's something that concerns a lot of you guys with your collections. Now, the last thing that I wanted to share with you guys is actually something to do with my first bookcase. So I'm going to go ahead and bring it more towards center stage, and we can kind of talk about it for a moment. So this was actually going to be more utilized in this video originally, like when I was sort of planning things out. And I ended up using the second bookcase instead, because when I started to try to maneuver this around to sort of, get it in front of the camera and whatnot, I found out that it was actually really flimsy. And when I looked at the back, I found out a lot of the nails had fallen out because, as I said before, when I first put this together, I really damaged the top here, and that meant that I had to take out the nail, lower it down, and then put it back in, which weakened the backing a little bit. So when it got moved in the moving van, they sort of rattled out. One of my fears I always have. So a good idea when you're moving these probably to tape the nails in. And because I didn't really have another alternative, I actually took some duct tape and I just went ahead and taped up the back, because this part was really coming apart. The part where IKEA actually put tape there so they could fold it. And you can kind of see, I always put these in front of my windows to prevent sun fading, and you can see that the sun has actually leached out the color on the bookcase itself. So that's another little tip, that if you've got windows and you're not using UV protection, you can use bookcases. But anyway, I actually used this duct tape here, and surprisingly, this really worked to reinforce it. Like, as I started maneuvering around, it's actually just as sturdy as any of the other bookcases now. And all I did was just really overdo it with some duct tape. So I wanted to let you know that that is an option. And something else you might want to consider would be, let's say, utilizing screws instead of nails when you're putting the backing on. Personally, I don't really feel comfortable doing that because I'm moving around so much right now. I feel like over time that would cause more damage than the nails would. But if I ever got to a place where I sort of felt like I was going to settle down and live there for the rest of my life, and I kind of felt like once I put my bookcases up, they're just sort of not going to move again, so I'm not ever going to have that opportunity to get behind them and push the nails back in. In that situation, I would definitely utilize some screws. And I would actually go even farther than that and put some Gorilla Tape over them as well, just to really sort of reinforce it. Gorilla Tape's like a duct tape plus. It's very, very strong. And that's sort of what I would do. Now, I also wanted to mention that regarding the dusting, when you have your DVDs on your bookshelves, they're covering up a good portion of the bookshelf, so they're actually getting quite a bit of dust on them. And when you remove the DVDs, you'll actually see a line in the bookshelf where, you know, the dust couldn't get underneath the DVDs. So if that kind of bothers you, like if you prefer to do the best you could to avoid getting dust on your DVDs, probably your best option would be to get the glass doors that would go onto whatever bookcase you're using. If you're using the IKEA brand, like the reason I don't use the glass doors personally is because I'm pretty sure you have to have like an inch or so gap in between your bookcases to compensate for how the hinges operate. But you know, if you've got a smaller collection, or maybe you've got one bookcase that is sort of like your show-off bookcase, you know, that you keep your favorite things in or something, in that situation, you know, maybe the glass doors would be right for you. But personally, I don't like to use them. So that's about it. I know this video's been a little bit long. As I said in the beginning, I don't really often have this opportunity, so I thought I would take the time to do this. But since we've already got a bookcase on the shelf here, I'm just going to go ahead and add this video to the playlist. So if you're interested in watching any of my other tips, go ahead and click on their icon, and that'll take you straight to their playlist. Anyway guys, I hope to have some more content for you soon, and I'll see you next time.